The mining drill screamed against the rock face as Su-Jin wiped sweat from her forehead. The heat on Kepler 442b never seemed to end, even deep inside the tunnels. She checked her readings one more time before shutting down the equipment. Another good day of work completed. Su-Jin, come up to the surface when you finish down there. Captain Haewon's voice crackled through her comm device. We need to run those emergency drills again. She sighed. Haewon always insisted on emergency training. Most of the miners thought it was a waste of time. They were so far from any shipping lanes that no one ever bothered them. But Su-Jin respected the former military captain. He had kept them all safe for 3 years now. The elevator ride to the surface took 5 minutes. When the doors opened, she could see the orange sky of their distant world. 2 suns hung low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the mining complex. 43 people called this place home. It wasn't much, but it was peaceful. There, you are? Haewon smiled as she approached the main building. Ready for another lesson about staying alive? Always, she replied. What are we learning today? Observation, the most important skill you can have. He pointed to the landing pad where their supply ship usually docked. Tell me what you see. Su-Jin looked carefully. Everything seemed normal. The pad was empty as expected. The next supply run wasn't due for 2 weeks, but something felt different. She studied the area more closely. The dust patterns are wrong, she said finally. Something landed there recently. Something heavy. Haewon nodded with approval. Very good. Always trust what the evidence tells you, even if it doesn't make sense at first. They walked closer to examine the landing pad. The burn marks were fresh, maybe a few hours old. But these weren't from their usual supply ships. The pattern was too wide and the heat signature was different. Captain, Jin-Ho's voice came over the comm system. He worked in the communications center. I'm getting some strange readings from our sensors. Looks like debris in orbit. What kind of debris? Haewon asked as they headed inside. Unknown. Metal fragments. Lots of them. Su-Jin felt a cold feeling in her stomach. She had learned to trust her instincts. Something was very wrong. The communications center was small but packed with equipment. Jin-Ho sat at his station studying multiple screens. Chang-min stood behind him looking worried. The scientist usually worked in the geological lab, but emergency protocols brought everyone together. Show me, Haewon said. Jin-Ho pointed to one of his displays. The debris field is spreading. Whatever happened up there was big. I'm trying to contact the orbital station but getting no response. How long since your last contact with them? 6 hours. They were supposed to check in 3 hours ago. Haewon's face grew serious. Send an emergency signal to Earth, full priority. Already tried. Something is jamming our long-range communications. Su-Jin watched the captain's expression change. She had seen that look before during their training sessions when he taught them about worst-case situations. This was becoming one of those situations. All right, everyone listen carefully, Haewon announced to the room. We're going to assume hostile contact. I want everyone to follow Emergency Protocol 7. That means essential personnel only in the main complex. Everyone else goes to the emergency shelters. Hostile contact? Chang-min asked. Who would attack a mining colony? Someone who doesn't want witnesses, Haewon replied grimly. The next few hours passed quickly. Su-Jin helped move supplies to the underground shelters, while Haewon organized their defenses. They had some weapons, but nothing meant for serious combat. Mining colonies weren't supposed to need heavy armaments. Du-Yan joined them from the medical bay. The young doctor had been treating a minor accident earlier and missed the initial excitement. What's our status? She asked. Unknown contacts, in system. Orbital station isn't responding. Communications are jammed, Su-Jin explained while loading emergency supplies. How long can we hold out in the shelters? 2 weeks if we're careful, Chang-min answered. Longer if help comes. But Su-Jin was beginning to doubt help would come in time. Whoever had destroyed the orbital station would soon turn their attention to the surface. She tried to remember everything Haewon had taught her about survival tactics. The attack came at dawn. Jin was in the communications center, helping Jin Ho monitor their sensors, when the sky lit up with energy beams. The blast came from orbit, targeting their power generators first. Professional military tactics. Everyone to the shelters now, Haewon ordered over the emergency comm system. The main power died as they ran through the corridors. Emergency. Lighting flickered on, casting strange shadows on the walls. Jin could hear explosions outside as more systems were destroyed. They reached the shelter entrance as the first landing ships appeared in the sky. These weren't human designs. The vessels were angular, painted in dark colors, and moved with aggressive precision. Get inside. Haewon pushed her toward the shelter door. I'm going to try to delay them. Captain, you can't face them alone. I'm not planning to fight them, just buy you time. Remember what I taught you about observation and patience. Use every advantage you can find. Those were the last words she heard from him. The shelter was designed to hide 40 people for extended periods. Emergency supplies, water recycling, and air filtration kept everyone alive. But they could hear the sounds of battle above. Energy weapons firing, explosions, then silence. Hours passed before the aliens found them. The shelter door burst open with a flash of cutting tools. Jin saw her first alien invader and tried to memorize every detail. Gray skin, 4 arms, wearing advanced battle armor. Taller than humans, but not by much. The weapons they carried looked energy-based. Do not resist, one of them spoke in broken human language. Resistance brings pain. 37 miners were still alive in the shelter. The aliens separated them into groups. Most were loaded onto transport ships immediately, but they kept Jin and 5 others apart. One alien, wearing different armor that suggested higher rank, studied her carefully. This one shows intelligence. Observe how she watches us. She learns. Is that significant? Another alien asked. Perhaps. The Empire values specimens that show potential. As they dragged her toward their ship, Jin continued to observe everything. The aliens moved with military discipline but showed signs of casual arrogance. They thought humans were weak and primitive. Their technology was advanced but not impossible to understand. Most importantly, they were taking prisoners instead of simply killing everyone. That meant they had plans for their captives. And plans could be studied, understood, and eventually turned against their creators. Haewon's lessons echoed in her mind as the alien ship lifted off from the surface of her destroyed home. Observation and patience. Use every advantage you can find. Shiwao was already planning to do exactly that. The journey to the alien homeworld took 6 days. Jin spent every moment studying her captors. The gray-skinned aliens called themselves the Vorthak. They had 4 arms each and spoke in harsh clicking sounds when they thought the humans couldn't understand them. But Jin was learning their language faster than they realized. The ship's design told her much about their culture. Everything was built for efficiency and war. Sharp angles, dark metals, and weapons everywhere. These beings lived for conflict. The guards carried energy rifles but also kept blade weapons at their sides. They respected strength above all else. Where are they taking us? Whispered Jin Ho during one of their brief rest periods. Somewhere important, Jin replied quietly. Did you notice how the crew behaves differently now? They're more formal. We're getting close to something significant. Do-yeon sat nearby, treating a cut on Changmin's arm with supplies she had managed to save. I've been watching their medical equipment, she said softly. It's designed for multiple species. They've done this before. Done what before? Changmin asked. Captured other races. This isn't their first time dealing with aliens. When they finally arrived at Vorthak Prime, Jin's breath caught in her throat. The planet's surface was covered with massive structures, all built around one enormous central building. The building was circular, with high walls and thousands of lights. Even from orbit, she could see crowds of beings moving around it. The Grand Arena, one of the guards said with pride. Greatest structure in the galaxy. Soon you will see its glory up close. They landed at a military facility near the arena. The prisoners were separated again. Sujin found herself in a holding area with 12 other humans from various captured ships and colonies. Some had been here for months. "New arrivals," said an older human woman with graying hair. "I'm Yejin. Used to be a defense officer before. They caught my transport ship." "Sujin, mining engineer. How long have you been here?" 4 months. Long enough to understand how things work." Yejin gestured toward the walls. "This whole civilization revolves around that arena. They capture beings from across the galaxy and make them fight their collection of predators." "Fight? Like gladiators?" "Worse. They call it scientific research. They want to study how different species react to extreme threats. The Emperor himself watches every match." Sujin absorbed this information. "What happens to the winners?" "There usually aren't any winners. The creatures they use are apex predators from death worlds, things that evolved to kill everything they encounter." But Yejin's expression suggested there was more to the story. "However, a few humans have survived by being clever instead of strong. There's one girl, Doyon, from the medical colony, who survived 3 matches by using the arena's own design against the creatures." "Doyon?" Sujin's heart jumped. "Short dark hair, medical training? You know her?" "She was captured with me." "Where is she now?" "In the research section. Survivors get special treatment. They study how we manage to live." Over the following days, Sujin learned the layout of their prison complex. The holding areas were connected to research labs, medical facilities, and preparation chambers. Everything led toward the arena itself, which dominated the center of the capital city. The Vorthak guards were professional but careless about security around humans. They viewed Earthlings as primitive creatures who couldn't possibly understand advanced technology. This gave Sujin opportunities to observe their systems and learn their routines. "They have a pattern," she told Yejin during their exercise. Period. "Guard changes happen every 8 hours. The security doors operate on timed locks, and the power systems all route through central conduits." "Planning something?" "Always. Captain Haywan taught me to always have backup plans." "Smart." "Captain, what else did he teach you?" "That the best time to act is when your enemy thinks they have already won." Jinho was placed in a different section, but they managed to communicate through the meal distribution system. Changmin was in the research labs, being questioned about human technology and capabilities. All of them were being studied like laboratory specimens. But the Vorthak made one crucial error. They assumed human intelligence was limited to simple problem solving. They didn't understand that humans could plan far beyond immediate survival. On her 5th day, Sujin was taken to meet Doyon in the research section. Her friend looked tired but alert. "Sujin," Doyon smiled. "I was hoping you made it through the capture. How have you survived 3 arena matches?" "By remembering that every environment has weaknesses. The arena looks like a simple fighting pit, but it's actually a complex machine. Force fields, environmental controls, automated systems. The creatures they use are dangerous, but they're still just animals following instincts." "What about the Vorthak? What are their weaknesses?" Doyon lowered her voice. "Arrogance. They're so convinced of their superiority that they don't see threats from species they consider inferior. They also depend heavily on their technology. Take away their machines and they become much less dangerous." "Are there other human survivors here?" "A few. We try to share information when possible. There's a maintenance worker named Min Ho, who has access to the arena's technical systems, and a former pilot called Taijun who understands their ship designs." "How many total?" "Maybe 30 humans scattered throughout the complex. Not enough for direct action, but enough to cause significant problems if we coordinate properly." Sujin spent the rest of her time in the research section, memorizing everything she could about the arena's construction. The facility was massive, with dozens of levels above and below ground. The main fighting area was surrounded by spectator sections that could hold 50,000 Vorthak. Beneath it all was a network of power conduits, life support systems, and creature containment areas. Most importantly, she learned that the arena's energy requirements were enormous. All those force fields, environmental controls, and security systems needed constant power. And the power grid had been designed for efficiency, not redundancy. When they returned her to the holding area, Sujin had formed the beginnings of a plan. But she needed more time to work out the details. "They're announcing your match tomorrow," Yejin told her when she arrived. "Tomorrow? Against what?" "The Nexus Stalker. 8 feet tall, razor claws, bulletproof hide. No one has ever survived. Against it." Sujin smiled calmly. "Then I'll be the first." "How can you be so confident?" "Because they think the match starts tomorrow. But for me, it started the day they captured us." The night before her arena match, Sujin couldn't sleep, but that was exactly what she wanted. Sleep was wasted time, and she had too much work to do. The guards thought she was scared. They saw her pacing in her cell and whispering to herself. What they didn't realize was that she was running through calculations and memorizing the arena schematics Duyan had described. "You should rest," Yejin advised from the next cell. "You'll need your strength tomorrow." "I'll need my mind more." "Then my strength," Sujin replied. "Tell me again about the power distribution system." "The main conduits run beneath the arena floor. They branch out to feed the force field generators, environmental controls, and security systems." "But why does that matter? You'll be fighting a creature, not fixing electrical problems." "Everything is connected. The creature, the arena, the systems, the audience. It's all one big machine. And machines can be broken if you know where to apply pressure." Earlier that evening, Minho had been brought through their section on a maintenance assignment. The brief conversation they managed to have was crucial. "The power grid has a safety feature," he had whispered while pretending to check a wall panel. "If too many systems overload at once, it triggers an emergency shutdown. But the shutdown sequence takes 90 seconds to complete." What happens during those 90 seconds? Chaos. Every security system, every force field, every containment barrier goes offline while the system reboots. That information changed everything about her plan. The morning brought new visitors. A group of Vortex scientists wanted to study her before the match. They measured her physical capabilities, tested her reflexes, and asked dozens of questions about human biology and psychology. "This specimen shows unusual calm before facing certain death," one scientist noted to his colleagues. "Perhaps humans possess some form of mental defect that prevents proper fear response. Or perhaps," said another, "they are too primitive to understand their situation." Sujin let them think whatever they wanted. While they focused on their tests, she observed, their equipment, their procedures, and their assumptions about human intelligence. Everything they did reinforced her growing understanding of Vorthak weaknesses. They were brilliant with technology but terrible at understanding other minds. They could build amazing machines but couldn't imagine how other species might think differently than they did. Most importantly, they had never encountered a species that could turn observation into a weapon. Changmin was brought in during the afternoon for what the aliens called a final interview. He looked tired but alert. The scientist wanted to document human emotional responses to extreme stress by studying the reactions of her friend. "Are you afraid for your companion?" they asked Changmin. "Yes," he answered honestly. "But I also believe in her abilities. Humans are good at solving impossible problems." "Explain this belief." "We adapt. We learn. We find ways to survive in situations where survival seems impossible." The scientist recorded his answers but clearly didn't understand their significance. To them, it was just primitive superstition. They couldn't imagine that Changmin was actually passing information to Sujin through their conversation. When he mentioned adapting to electrical storms on mining worlds, she knew he was telling her about power surges. When he described learning to read dangerous geological formations, he was explaining structural weak points. Their entire conversation was a technical briefing disguised as emotional testimony. That evening, Taijun managed to get a message to her through the meal distribution system. The former pilot had been studying the arena's crowd control systems and discovered something important. "The spectator sections have their own power grid," his hidden note explained. "Separate from the main arena systems. If the main grid fails, emergency lighting in the crowd areas stays active, but the barriers between sections go offline." This added another layer to her plan. The Vorthak leadership would be watching from the premium sections, protected by force fields and security barriers. If those barriers failed at the right moment, the chaos wouldn't be contained to just the arena floor. As night fell, Sujin reviewed everything she had learned. The arena's power system had multiple redundancies but one critical flaw. The main conduits all fed through a central junction beneath the fighting area. If that junction overloaded, the safety systems would shut down everything connected to the main grid. The Nexus Stalker would be released from a containment area that also relied on the main power system. The creature was dangerous, but it was also a tool she could use if she understood its behavior patterns. Duyan mentioned that all the arena predators are studied extensively, she recalled from their earlier conversation. The Vorthak know exactly how each creature hunts, what triggers its aggressive responses, and how it reacts to different environments. That knowledge would normally be an advantage for the arena designers, but it could also be a weakness if someone understood the system well enough to manipulate it. The guard shift changed at midnight. Sujin used the transition period to have one final conversation with Yejin. "If my plan works, there's going to be a lot of confusion tomorrow," she said quietly. "The other humans need to be ready to move quickly when the opportunity comes." "What exactly are you planning?" "To give them a demonstration they'll never forget. The Vorthak think they understand what humans are capable of. Tomorrow they're going to learn how wrong they are. And if your plan fails, then at least I'll go down fighting on my own terms, but it won't fail. I've had too much time to think and they've given me too much information." The final hours before dawn passed slowly. Sujin used the time to run through her plan one more time, considering every possible variation and backup option. She thought about Captain Haywan's training, about the mining equipment she had operated for years, about the power systems she had maintained on dozens of different worlds. All of that experience was about to become her greatest weapon. When the guards came to escort her to the arena preparation chambers, she was ready. Not just ready to fight for her life, but ready to turn the Vorthak's own system against them in ways they could never anticipate. "Time to go, human," the lead guard announced. "The Emperor is eager to see how long you survive against our greatest predator." Sujin stood calmly and walked toward the door. "I'm eager to show him," she replied. The guard laughed, thinking she was making a joke about her own death. He had no idea that she was completely serious. By the time they reached the preparation area, word was spreading throughout the complex that something special was about to happen. The arena staff seemed more excited than usual. Even some of the maintenance workers had gathered to watch the proceedings on monitors. Perfect. The more Vorthak who were paying attention, the better her plan would work. As they fitted her with the basic protective gear that all arena participants received, Sujin took one final look at the technical systems around her. Everything was exactly as she had calculated. "Ready?" asked the arena coordinator. "I've been ready for days," she answered truthfully. The massive doors began to open, revealing the arena floor beyond. 50,000 Vorthak voices rose in anticipation, but their excitement was nothing compared to the quiet confidence in Sujin's mind. The experiment was about to begin, but not the one they expected. The massive doors groaned open, revealing the arena floor bathed in harsh white light. Sujin stepped forward, and the roar of 50,000 Vorthak spectators crashed over her like a wave. The sound was deafening, filled with bloodthirsty excitement and anticipation. She had prepared for this moment for days, but seeing the arena in person was still overwhelming. The circular fighting pit stretched 200 meters across, surrounded by towering walls that rose 20 meters high. Above that, tier after tier of seating climbed toward the domed ceiling, packed with alien spectators waving their forearms in excitement. At the highest level, behind layers of force fields and armored glass, sat the Imperial viewing box. Emperor. Threxnal was clearly visible on his throne, flanked by his generals and advisors. Even from this distance, Sujin could see him leaning forward with interest. "Behold," the announcer's voice boomed through speakers hidden throughout the arena. "Another specimen from the weak species known as humans. Today this female will demonstrate the futility of opposing the Vorthak Empire. The crowd cheered louder. Sujin walked slowly toward the center of the arena, using the time to complete her final observations. Everything was exactly as Do-yeon had described during their brief meeting in the research section. The arena floor appeared to be solid rock, but she could see the subtle grid patterns that revealed the power conduits running beneath. The walls contained the force field generators at regular intervals, their energy fields shimmering almost invisibly in the bright lights. Environmental control vents dotted the ceiling, currently pumping hot, humid air into the space. Most importantly, she spotted the maintenance access panels that Minho had told her about. They were disguised to look like decorative elements, but her engineering training helped her identify the real function of each panel. The human walks calmly to her death, General Kaelvox observed from the Imperial box. Perhaps she does not understand what awaits her. Or perhaps, Emperor Threxnal replied thoughtfully, she is more interesting than the usual specimens. I want to see how long she survives. On the arena floor, Sujin reached the center and turned in a slow circle, appearing to look around in wonder and fear. In reality, she was memorizing the exact positions of every critical system component. The power distribution nodes were located precisely where her calculations had predicted. The structural weak points were clearly visible once you knew what to look for. A deep rumbling sound echoed through the arena as the creature release mechanism activated. One section of the wall began to slide open, revealing a dark tunnel beyond. The crowd fell silent in anticipation. From the death world of Kythera Prime, the announcer continued dramatically. We present the Nexus Stalker. 47 victories, 0 defeats. No creature has ever survived an encounter with this apex predator. The silence stretched for several seconds. Then slowly, the stalker emerged from its tunnel. Sujin had to admit that it was an impressive sight. The creature stood 8 feet tall on powerful hind legs, its body covered in natural armor plates that gleamed like black metal. 6 eyes moved independently as it scanned the arena, and its 4 arms each ended in claws as long as kitchen knives. When it opened its mouth, she could see rows of razor-sharp teeth, but Sujin was not impressed by its size or weapons. She was interested in its behavior patterns. The stalker began to circle the arena perimeter, staying close to the walls while it studied this new prey. Its movements were careful and controlled, showing the intelligence that had made it such a successful predator. This was not a mindless beast that would charge blindly into battle. Excellent, she whispered to herself, just as Do-yeon described. The creature's behavioral patterns had been studied extensively by Vorthak scientists. She knew it would circle first, testing her reactions and looking for signs of weakness. Then it would make increasingly aggressive displays to induce panic in its prey. Only when it was confident of an easy kill would it launch its final attack. The problem was that Sujin had no intention of being easy prey. Instead of cowering in the center of the arena as most victims did, she began to move as well. She matched the stalker's circling motion, maintaining the same distance while gradually shifting their shared path around the arena floor. Interesting behavior, one of the Imperial advisors commented. The human attempts to avoid immediate confrontation. It will not help her, General Kaelvox replied confidently. The stalker is far faster and stronger than any human. This merely delays the inevitable, but Emperor Threxnal was studying the scene more carefully. Look at her movement pattern. She is not running in panic. She appears to be leading the creature toward specific locations. Surely you do not suggest the primitive human has a strategy, Your Majesty. I suggest we continue watching before making assumptions. On the arena floor, Sujin was indeed following a careful strategy. Each time the stalker moved, she adjusted her own position to guide their circular dance toward the first target location. The creature was becoming more agitated as it realized its prey was not behaving as expected. After several minutes of this careful maneuvering, the stalker's patience began to wear thin. It started making short rushes toward her, testing her speed and reactions. Each time Sujin dodged at the last possible moment, staying just out of reach of those deadly claws. But her dodges were not random. Every evasive move brought them closer to the precise position she needed. The crowd was growing restless. They had come to see a quick, brutal execution, not this extended game of chase. Some spectators began to boo, demanding more action. The creature grows frustrated, the announcer observed. Soon it will abandon caution for direct assault. He was right. The stalker's movements were becoming more erratic and aggressive. Its natural hunting instincts were being overridden by irritation at this unusually elusive prey. When the first real attack came, Su-jin was ready. The stalker launched itself across 10 meters of space in a single bound, all 4 clawed arms, extended for the kill. But instead of dodging sideways as she had been doing, Su-jin ran directly toward the creature and dropped into a sliding roll at the last second. The predator's claws raked empty air as she passed beneath its leap, but its momentum carried it forward, and when it landed, all 8 feet of its weight came down precisely where she had intended. The impact point was directly over one of the main power conduits. Sparks erupted from the arena floor as the protective housing cracked under the creature's weight. Warning lights began flashing on monitoring stations throughout the facility, but the technical staff attributed the damage to normal wear from arena combat. The stalker recovered quickly and spun around, looking for its prey, but Su-jin was already moving, leading it toward the next target location. The human shows remarkable agility, General Kale Vox admitted grudgingly, but she cannot maintain this pace indefinitely. No Emperor, Threxnall agreed, but observe how she moves. Each dodge appears desperate yet brings the creature to exact positions around the arena. Either she is incredibly lucky, or what, Your Majesty, or she understands something about our arena that we have not considered. The dance continued for another 10 minutes. Each time the stalker attacked, Su-jin led it to another specific location. Each impact damaged another section of the hidden power grid. The arena's technical staff was beginning to notice multiple system warnings, but they still believed they were seeing routine damage from an unusually long battle. Power fluctuations in sections 4, 7, 11, and 15, the chief technician reported to his supervisor. Nothing critical yet, but we should monitor the situation. Continue normal operations, came the reply. The Emperor is enjoying this contest. We will not interrupt unless there is immediate danger. But there was immediate danger. They simply did not recognize it yet. Su-jin moved into the final phase of her plan. The stalker had been attacking for 20 minutes and was beginning to show signs of fatigue. More importantly, the arena's power grid was now compromised in exactly the pattern she needed. She stopped running and stood still in the center of the arena. The sudden change in behavior confused the predator. For 20 minutes it had been chasing constantly moving prey. Now that prey stood motionless, apparently surrendering to the inevitable, the crowd sensed that the end was near. The noise level dropped as 50,000 spectators focused on what they believed would be the final moments of the contest. The human has exhausted herself, the announcer declared. She awaits the killing blow. But Su-jin was not exhausted, or surrendering. She was calculating precise angles and timing for her final move. The power grid was critically weakened in 12 locations. The creature was positioned exactly where she needed it. Every eye in the arena was focused on this moment. The stalker gathered itself for the killing charge, its 6 eyes fixed on her motionless form, and its muscles coiled like springs. This time, there would be no dodge, no escape, no clever maneuvering. When it launched itself forward, Su-jin waited until the last possible moment. Then, instead of dodging aside, she threw herself forward in a desperate roll, passing directly beneath the creature as it sailed overhead. Her timing was perfect. The stalker's own momentum carried it directly into the central power junction, the most critical point of the arena's entire electrical system. The arena plunged into chaos as every containment system failed simultaneously. Emergency lighting flickered on, casting strange shadows across the arena floor where Su-jin stood calmly beside the stunned Nexus stalker. All containment barriers are offline, the chief technician shouted over the sound of alarms. Every level, every section. Impossible, his supervisor replied. The backup systems should have engaged. The backup systems are also down. Whatever caused this overload damaged the entire grid. In the darkness below the arena, dozens of containment cells opened automatically as their power failed. The creatures housed there had been captured from the most dangerous worlds in the galaxy. Apex predators that had never been defeated in combat. Now they were all free at once. The crowd's confusion turned to panic as the first escaped creatures appeared in the spectator sections. A void ripper from the Andromeda spiral materialized in the lower tiers, its tentacles already reaching for the nearest Vorthak civilians. A pack of storm wolves from the Rigel system bounded into the middle sections, their electric fur sparking. In the emergency lighting, "Evacuate the arena," Emperor Threxnal commanded. All security forces to contain the situation. But General Kelvox was studying the chaos with growing understanding. "Your Majesty, look at the human. She's not running from the danger." On the arena floor, Sujin was indeed behaving strangely for someone who should be terrified. Instead of fleeing the approaching creatures, she was moving systematically around the arena's perimeter, her hands working on panels that should have been sealed. "How is she accessing the maintenance systems?" the general demanded of his technical staff. "The security locks are offline with everything else," came the reply. "But even so, she shouldn't know the access codes. Unless someone taught them to her." In the holding areas beneath the arena, other human prisoners were also moving with suspicious coordination. Yejin had rallied the humans in her section and was leading them toward the armory that Minho had told them about. Changmin was accessing computer terminals that should have been impossible for prisoners to reach. "This isn't random chaos," General Kaelvox realized. "This is organized." Emperor Threxnal's expression grew cold. "Are you suggesting that the primitive human planned this?" Before the general could answer, a new voice echoed through the arena's communication system. Somehow someone had gained control of the public address speakers. "Citizens of the Vorthak Empire," Sujin's voice rang out clearly. "You wanted to study human capabilities. Allow me to provide a more complete demonstration." On the arena floor, she had reached one of the primary communication hubs. With the security systems down, accessing it had been simple for someone who understood power grid maintenance. For months, you have captured humans from across the galaxy. You have studied us, tested us, and treated us like laboratory animals. You believe that you understand what we are capable of. The escaped creatures were spreading throughout the arena complex, but Sujin continued her broadcast calmly. "But you made several critical errors in your research. First, you assumed that human intelligence was limited to simple survival instincts. Second, you believed that our cooperative behavior was a sign of weakness rather than strength. Third, you thought that our questions about your technology came from curiosity rather than strategic planning." In the Imperial section, Emperor Threxnal was watching with growing fury and disbelief. "How many humans are involved in this?" General Kaelvox was coordinating with his security forces through his personal communicator. "At least 30 confirmed participants across multiple sections. They're moving with military precision." "Impossible. We monitored all prisoner communications. Apparently, not as well as we thought." Meanwhile, Sujin had moved to her next objective. The arena's central control room was protected by multiple barriers, but with the power grid down, she could access it through the maintenance tunnels that Minho had mapped for her. "Your fourth error," her voice continued over the speakers, "was assuming that the experiment began when you wanted it to. In reality, the experiment began the moment you captured the first human. Every day since then, we have been studying you." The control room was in chaos when she arrived. Technicians were frantically trying to restore power while security staff attempted to coordinate a response to the creature outbreak. None of them noticed one more person entering through the maintenance access until she was already at the primary console. "We learned your language, your technology, your behavioral patterns, and most importantly, your weaknesses," she continued as her hands flew over the control interfaces. "We discovered that your entire civilization depends on the assumption that other species are inferior to you." "Stop her," Emperor Threxnal commanded over the emergency channels. But the security forces were scattered throughout the complex, dealing with escaped predators and coordinating evacuations. The few guards who reached the control room found it protected by Changmin and two other humans who had somehow acquired Vorthak weapons. Your fifth and most critical error, Sujin announced, was believing that humans fight only for survival. We don't. We fight for each other, for our principles, and for our future. And when you threaten those things, we fight with everything we have. Her fingers found the controls she needed. The arena's communication array was far more powerful than just local broadcasts. It was connected to the planetary defense network, the interstellar communication grid, and the imperial data storage systems. This message is being transmitted to every world in your empire and to every human resistance cell in the galaxy. What you are witnessing is not an escape. It is a declaration. Throughout Vorthak space, the signal was indeed reaching human prisoners, resistance fighters, and hidden colonies. But it was also being received by Vorthak military commanders who were beginning to understand the scope of what had been planned. We know your ship designs, your weapon capabilities, your supply lines, and your strategic weaknesses. We know which worlds support your empire willingly and which ones are held by force. We know where your leaders live and where your fleets are stationed. In the arena below, the escaped creatures had turned the lower levels into a nightmare, but the humans were moving through the chaos with practiced coordination, releasing more prisoners and accessing more critical systems. Every human you captured was gathering intelligence. Every question we asked was part of our research. Every day you held us prisoner was another day we spent preparing for this moment. Emperor Threxnal had reached the secure command bunker, deep beneath the arena. From there, he could coordinate the planetary defense forces. But when he tried to access the communication networks, he found that they were no longer under his control. She's in our primary systems, General Kalevox reported. The human has administrative access to everything. How is that possible? We gave them access. Every time we interrogated a prisoner, every time we tested their responses to our technology, we were showing them how our systems work. They learned by watching us. On the surface, Sujin was preparing for the final phase of her plan. The chaos in the arena was providing perfect cover for the other humans to reach the spaceport. But more importantly, it was demonstrating to the entire Vorthak Empire that their supposedly invincible civilization could be brought to its knees by the species they considered primitive. "This is our message to your empire," she announced as escape ships began launching from the spaceport. "Humanity is not your enemy because we want to be. We are your enemy because you made us into one. You declared war on our colonies, our families, and our future." The ships carrying escaped human prisoners were disappearing into hyperspace, carrying with them months of gathered intelligence about Vorthak technology and strategy. But we are not like you. We do not seek to dominate or destroy other species. We seek only to protect ourselves and those we care about. End your attacks on human worlds, release all human prisoners, and leave our space. Do this and we will leave you alone. Emperor Threxnal managed to establish contact with his fleet commanders. Intercept those ships. They cannot be allowed to return to human space with what they have learned. Your Majesty, they've disabled half our orbital defense platforms, and they're jamming our fleet communications with some kind of signal we've never seen before. Refuse our terms, Sujin's broadcast continued, and discover what humans are truly capable of when we stop holding back. As the last escape ship disappeared into hyperspace, carrying Doyon, Changmin, and dozens of other rescued humans, Sujin prepared to leave as well. But first, she had one final demonstration to provide. "The experiment is over," she announced. "Thank you for the education." She triggered the final sequence she had programmed into the arena's systems. Every screen in the complex, every communicator, every data storage device began broadcasting the same message simultaneously. Technical specifications for Vorthak weapons, strategic assessments of their military capabilities, detailed analysis of their political structure and economic weaknesses. Everything that 30 captured humans had learned during their imprisonment, now being transmitted to every corner of human space. The Vorthak Empire had indeed conducted an experiment. But they had been the test subjects, not the researchers. 3 months after the arena incident, Emperor Threxnal stood before the emergency session of the Imperial War Council. The throne room, once a symbol of Vorthak supremacy, now felt like a bunker under siege. "Report," he commanded General Kale Vox. Their general's forearms moved nervously as he consulted his datapad. "Your Majesty, the situation continues to deteriorate. Human strike forces have attacked 17 military installations across the Outer Rim. They know exactly where our weak points are located." "How many ships have we lost?" 237 confirmed destroyed. But that's not the worst part. They're not trying to hold territory or destroy our colonies. They're targeting our command structure and supply lines with surgical precision. Emperor Threxnal's claws scraped against his throne. "Explain." "They hit our communication relays first, cutting off entire fleets from Central Command. Then they attack supply convoys, but only the ones carrying critical components. They know which ships carry ammunition, which ones have replacement parts, and which ones have food supplies. It's like they have complete access to our logistics, databases." "Because they do," Admiral Vexcol interrupted from across the chamber. "That human female transmitted everything to their resistance networks. Ship designs, weapon specifications, patrol routes, supply schedules. They have better intelligence about our own empire than we do." The Emperor's rage was building, but so was his growing understanding of how completely they had been outmaneuvered. "What about our counterattacks?" "Failed," General Kale Vox admitted. "Every time we move against a human target, they're gone before we arrive. They know our ship capabilities, our maximum speeds, our jump drive limitations. They plan their operations around our response times." Admiral Vexcol pulled up a holographic display showing the current state of the war. "Your Majesty, look at their strategy. They're not fighting us like a traditional military force. They're fighting us like we're a research project they're conducting." The display showed a pattern of attacks that seemed random at first, but revealed careful planning upon closer examination. Human forces had struck at exactly the right locations to disrupt Vorthak operations without triggering massive retaliation. "They're testing our responses," the Admiral continued. "Each attack teaches them more about our tactical doctrines, our decision-making processes, and our military culture, just like we studied them in the arena." "Are you telling me that the humans are conducting experiments on us?" "Yes, Your Majesty, and they're much better at it than we were." The War Council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The Vorthak had spent decades capturing and studying other species, confident in their intellectual superiority. Now they were discovering what it felt like to be the subjects of a more advanced intelligence. "There's more," General Kyle Vox said reluctantly. "The humans have made contact with 7 species that we've conquered in the past 50 years. They're sharing intelligence about our weaknesses and offering military support." Rebellion? Coordinated uprising. The humans aren't just fighting for themselves anymore. They're organizing a coalition against us. Emperor Threxnal stood and began pacing, his claws clicking against the metal floor. "How did one primitive species turn our entire empire upside down?" "Because they were never primitive," Admiral Vexcol answered. "We made that assumption based on our own biases. We saw their technology and decided they were inferior. We saw their cooperative behavior and decided they were weak. We never considered that they might be intelligent in ways we couldn't recognize." "What do you mean?" "Humans don't just solve individual problems, Your Majesty. They solve systemic problems. When we captured their people, they didn't just plan individual escapes. They planned the destruction of our entire system of oppression." The Admiral changed the holographic display to show intercepted human communications. "Look at their organizational structure. They don't have a central command like we do. Instead, they have multiple independent cells that coordinate through shared information. We can't defeat them by cutting off their leadership because they don't have single leaders." General Kale Vox added more disturbing information. "They've also been broadcasting our prison conditions throughout the galaxy. Other species are beginning to see us as monsters rather than as rightful conquerors. Our diplomatic relationships are collapsing. And the economic impact? Severe. Trade routes are being disrupted by human raids and by allies who no longer trust us. Our colonies are requesting additional protection, which is straining our military resources. Some outer worlds are beginning to question whether the Empire can actually protect them. Emperor Threxnall stopped pacing and turned to face his council. What are our options? The chamber remained silent for several moments before Admiral Vex Cole spoke carefully. Your Majesty, we could continue fighting. Our military is still larger than theirs. But the humans have shown they don't need to match our size to defeat us. They just need to understand us better than we understand them. And they do understand us better? Much better. They've been studying us for months while we studied them, but their study was focused on practical applications rather than simple curiosity. They learned exactly what they needed to know to destroy us. General Kalevox pulled up another display. We could also consider negotiation. The humans have made their terms clear. Release all prisoners and attacks on human colonies withdraw from human space. In exchange, they'll stop their campaign against us. You're suggesting surrender to a primitive species? I'm suggesting recognition that they're not primitive. Your Majesty, that human female in the arena demonstrated capabilities we didn't know existed. She turned our own systems against us using nothing but observation and intelligence. If that's what one human can do alone, imagine what their entire species can accomplish working together. The Emperor considered this for a long moment. His empire had been built on the assumption that the Vorthak were the most advanced species in the galaxy. That assumption was proving to be dangerously wrong. What guarantee do we have that they'll honor any agreement? The same guarantee they have that we will, Admiral Vex Cole replied. None. But they've shown they prefer solutions that benefit everyone when possible. Their attacks have been precisely targeted to cause military damage while avoiding civilian casualties. They could have destroyed entire cities but chose not to. They're trying to change our behavior rather than destroy us, General Kalevox added. That suggests they believe coexistence is possible. Emperor Threxnall returned to his throne and sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, he spoke. Send a message to the human leadership. We are prepared to discuss terms. Your Majesty, the experiment is over, General. We learned what we set out to learn. Humans are indeed a remarkable species. Unfortunately, we learned it the hard way. 6 months later, Su-Jin stood on the observation deck of the human research station orbiting Earth. Through the viewport, she could see Vorthak diplomatic ships docked at the International Space Station. The peace negotiations were proceeding slowly but steadily. Duyan joined her at the viewport. Any regrets about how things turned out? About the peace negotiations? No. About the people who died before we reached this point? Yes. The Vorthak are actually honoring the agreement. All human prisoners have been released and they've withdrawn from our territory. For now. But we need to stay vigilant. They're not evil, just arrogant. And arrogance can return if success makes them forget the lessons they learned. Chang Min approached from the research stations where he had been analyzing Vorthak technology. The intelligence we gathered is proving invaluable, not just about their capabilities, but about how they think. We're developing new defensive strategies based on psychological profiles rather than just military assessments. Su-Jin nodded. Good. The real victory wasn't defeating them in battle. It was teaching them that they couldn't defeat us. Sometimes the best way to win a war is to make the other side realize they don't want to fight it. What's next for you? Duyan asked. Captain Haiwan always said that the best defense is understanding your potential enemies better than they understand themselves. I think humanity needs to take that lesson seriously. There are other species out there, and some of them might make the same mistakes the Vorthak did. Another research project? Su-Jin smiled. In a way. But this time, we'll be the ones asking the questions from the beginning. Through the viewport, she could see the stars that contained thousands of worlds and millions of species. Humanity had taken its first real step into galactic politics, and it had done so not through conquest or submission, but through intelligence and determination. The outcome had indeed been decided long before the arena match began. It was decided the moment humans chose to learn rather than simply survive, to cooperate rather than compete, and to think beyond the immediate problem to the systemic solution. The Vorthak had wanted to study human capabilities. They had learned more than they bargained for. But the lesson hadn't ended with their defeat. It had ended with their understanding that some species were meant to be partners rather than subjects. And sometimes, the greatest victory was helping your former enemy reach that same understanding. The experiment was over, but the real work was just beginning.